We need an intro. Do you want to do I can do the intro.
Hi guys, welcome to the Bob Stop. Today we're talking about albums.
He's really good at this, okay?
Good. Yeah. Joe and I, we each have 15 albums that we want to talk about that have come out this year so far, and we've ordered them such that the album that is first
10.
on our list is the one that we most think the other person wants to talk about.
No, we're not doing that again.
Oh, I did
It's 10 albums, and
it's 10?
Yeah, you said cut it down to 10. You literally
I said we could do 10. You never said yes. Okay.
Yes, I did.
Let me delete
you
5
literally were
albums
like,
real quick.
you literally said, okay, we can do 10. I also didn't think we were doing the game again because I thought we talked about it and it made no sense.
It doesn't make sense, but I kind of enjoyed it.
I chose albums that I didn't think were going to be on yours.
All right. Cool, I'm down. We're doing 10 albums. I definitely didn't have a list of 15 albums.
I'm going from worst to best, and by that I mean really great to amazing, basically. All the albums I'm recommending, I think, are fantastic. So,
I think all these are pretty great too. I'm pretty excited about them.
What a coinky dink! The album where we talk about the best albums of the year, I fucked that up. The video where we talk about the best albums of the year has some great albums in it, apparently.
It does. So. And EPs. I have one EP.
You have one? Oh, I didn't know we were also doing EPs, because I would have included a couple EPs.
I'll start off with my first pick, which is Godspeed You Black Emperor, Godspeed at State's End.
All right.
Is that not on your list?
No, because I knew it was going to be on yours.
Damn,
also,
well,
I reviewed
okay.
it. I literally reviewed it, so I don't think it needs me to say it again.
But, it's really good.
It is. It's a really great album. I don't know if it's necessarily my favorite thing they've done since Lift Your Skinny Fists. That might be Don't Bend Ascend for me.
Yeah.
But it's a really great record. I don't know, it's just they're doing what they do, and they're doing it really well. I do definitely feel like it's a bit too similar to some of their previous work, but it still has some really great songs on it, and great album. Watch the review that I did.
Definitely watch the review. I want to say just about this album, I feel like they allow the compositions to build and progress a lot more naturally on this record than they have on some of their recent releases. Recent being the past decade. I definitely think that this is, in a sense, kind of a return to form for the band. I think it works out very well. There's just a lot of great builds, great compositions, great tracks on this album.
Well, my number 10 is I've Seen All I Need to See by The Body. It's honestly maybe the most terrifying album I've ever listened to. It is an incredibly heavy, dense-sounding noise record. You have just these layers of noise and guitar and drums that are just they sound blown out. There's also these incredibly sharp sounding screeches on the record that permeate the background of a lot of these songs. It's terrifying. But what I really love about the record is that a lot of the time this dark atmosphere that they build kind of gives way to these really beautiful moments. They just give you a sense of levity throughout, and it allows you to keep going through the very abrasive sound that they have. I highly recommend this if you're into noise or noise rock too. Great record.
I know you have listened to my next one, which is Iglooghost with Lei Line Eon.
Yep, it's not on mine because I knew it was going to be on his. So
it is on mine. I just love Iglooghost. I think he's easily one of the most creative artists making electronic music today. Direction he goes in with his more natural melodic sounds on this album, it's very interesting. I do think it's not as good as some of his previous work, but I like that he's experimenting and keeping it fresh, and I'm very interested to see how he progresses with this.
Yeah, I think what impresses me most about the new Iglooghost record is just how much of an album experience it is. I feel like previous records, they were like...
They were a collection of tracks.
Yeah, they were a collection of tracks. Like, they felt like they belonged together, but this new record feels really like you're supposed to listen through as an entire album. I think is really great. It's very atmospheric compared to his previous stuff. And yeah, I also think it's a fantastic record. But my number 9 pick, you know, I don't know if a lot of people are going to enjoy this record, but Typhoons by Royal Blood, I love. It is such a slick, catchy sounding, like, pop rock record. It's incredibly, like, groovy thanks to the bass guitar that's all over the album, and they just find these incredibly catchy, like, hooks that just permeate the record. I guarantee you, if you listen to this, there's going to be, like, at least one song that just gets stuck in your head, because they're so good at just finding these really catchy little guitar passages that are fantastic. This probably isn't the release that I think a lot of people will like love or enjoy, but I still think it's worth a listen. I think it's my favorite record from them, and I think it's just really fun, and it's really fun and creative, you know? And I like it a lot. I know you weren't the biggest fan of this.
I'm not the biggest fan. I will agree with you that there are definitely a couple tracks there that I do find are really catchy, stick in your head after a listen. So worth a checking out. So next on my list, I have Genesis Owusu, Smiling with No Teeth. This is like a really great, I guess, hip hop record. But
it's
there's
like,
a ton of...
I would say it's hip hop, but also like soul music, I guess. And like
there's a ton of variety in this track list because there's like bangers and like smooth ballads and like everything in between. It's really a kind of crazy album. I love the production work for this album. A lot of like the drum machine-esque type beats. Genesis Owusu. Is that his name or is that like a stage name? I don't know.
I'm guessing it's a stage name.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of anyone with the name Genesis?
I don't know.
Maybe it's not, and I'm just being a dick, but
I'll have to insert it later after I look it up. He does a great job throughout the record with his raps, his singing. Just really, really versatile record, and comes through with a lot of great tracks. There is that one Kieran J. Callanan feature that I'm not a fan of, but you know, it's passable.
All right, my number 8 is Metal Bird by Eve Adams. This is a really engaging and interesting, like, experimental folk record, and not enough people have listened to this. She has only like 1,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. Please go check her out. This, like, the guitar on this record just has this really, like, dissonant, dreary feel to it that I think just, like, brings these songs to life. Is that, like, contradictory?
Kind of. I guess you could say it gives them personality.
Yeah. But, and definitely, most of these songs are very slow-paced, and that, like, dreariness seeps into your head as you listen. I also love the experimentation on this record with, like, echo and reverb on both her vocals and guitar. And it's often used at, like, specific moments, which I think is really great. It, like, emphasizes certain parts of her vocals, and it just I don't know, it makes for such an interesting sound. I'd highly recommend checking it out if you're into, like, folk music at all. So, yeah. My
next one is going to be Kero Bonito with Civilization 2. This is an EP from KKB. Their second in a series of these Civilization EPs. They go for a very, like, dirty, futuristic sound, if that makes sense. A lot of the production off these records is very dense and kind of noise rock or shoegaze-esque, but also there's a lot of like synthesizers and drum machines, stuff like that. This is only like 3 tracks, and they're all like pretty solid in my opinion, especially Well Rested. I really love that track. It's like 7.5 minute journey to end these 2 EPs, but definitely check it out. It's like 13 minutes long or something, so if you have 13 minutes, worth your time in my opinion.
It's a very fun record. If you need something that, like, will pick you up, would highly recommend. So my number 7 is Fur Wave by Hannah Peale. This is an incredibly interesting and engaging experimental, like ambient and dance record. You have like throughout these almost angelic sounding harmonized vocal passages that just to give Hannah a really great like bass to experiment over and bring in all sorts of different sounds. I especially love on the track Emergence in Nature, there is this like deep like saxophone that is just so rich sounding and adds so much character to that track. I absolutely love it. I just think this is a fantastic like experimental electronic record, so check it out.
My next one is Arlo Parks with Collapsed in Sunbeams. This album is like, it's very melancholic, I'd say. There's a lot of life and observations on life presented in this record. Arlo Parks presents them in a very, very beautiful, kind of picturesque way. Lots of songs that they make me sad, and some that are a bit comforting at times. It's a sad indie record, but it's a good sad indie record.
It's a really great album, especially Caroline, that track.
Oh, that track is so good.
It got in my head, and I just like one day listened to it on repeat for like 10 times in a row. So, yeah, fantastic record.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, about that record, like a lot of the choruses are like very catchy, and they will stick with you.
My number 6 is Thumbing Through Foliage by Young Morpheus and E1E. This is a really fantastic underground hip-hop record, and it just has this really fantastic, rich, bassy sounding production from E1E that is just, like, it stands out. I don't know, this record's just so well produced, I don't know how it's not getting more attention for the production alone, but that production is just complemented incredibly well by Young Morpheus's, like, aggressive, but still, like, contained sounding rapping. I wrote out something that sounds a lot better than what I just said. That his rapping is like, it's really aggressive and intense, but it also feels very controlled, and also his lyricism is great. He's often very clever, but also kind of like tongue-in-cheek and funny on the record. I'd highly recommend checking it out. Not enough people listen to it. Go listen to it. It's great.
My next album I have here is Parannoul with To See the Next Part of the Dream. I don't know. I'm a big fan of like shoegaze, and this is it's a very modern shoegaze piece, and it I think works out really well. I know lots of people are hyping this record up, and I think it's pretty well deserved. It's probably my favorite album of the year so far. I love the compositions and the dreamy singing throughout the record. It is pretty much entirely in Korean, as a warning. If you look into the lyrics, they're just sort of the general standard like dream pop shoegaze stuff, but I don't know, it still works out, and I've never heard it in Korean before, so there's that. But yeah, I really think that the instrumentation is where this album shines, and just every track just lets you get lost in it. I think it's a great record.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it has some fantastic, dreamy instrumentation on it. You can just kind of get lost in it. Although I do feel like it gets a bit samey for me, personally. But I would still recommend. Great record. Alright, well, my number 5 is for Lovers by Death From Above, 1979. This is their 4th studio album. Yep. And it's probably their most interesting record from like a stylistic point of view, because this is easily their most noisy and like I'd say chaotic sounding record. Maybe not as chaotic as as chaotic as You're a Woman, I'm a Machine. Like almost it has a very like compressed, aggressive noise rock sound to it that sort of transforms into like almost a synth pop record towards the end, and it works way better than I expected it to. Just the way it sort of like almost slowly transitions into this like calmer and like sweeter sound is like surprisingly clean, and I think that switch like actually works pretty well. So yeah, I'd highly recommend checking it out.
Next up, I have Nick Cave and Warren Ellis with Carnage. the new collaborative album from those two.
Those two, yes.
Those two guys, they're Australian. I know that. I really love this album and just the variety of feelings, I guess, it evokes. There's songs that are sad or haunting or comforting or even like loving. There's a really wide variety there, and Nick Cave just delivers it all very, very beautifully. A lot of the writing is very poetic. Obviously, Nick Cave is well known for his writing. A lot of it works really well with the instrumentation presented on this record, and I definitely think it's another great project from Nick Cave. Check it out. Also, an album that the critics love. So,
well, don't worry, Brendan. Next up is an album that the critics definitely love.
Yeah.
So my number 4 is Cavalcade by Black Midi.
Okay. Yeah.
And this record, it continues their experimentation with this like really odd, in-your-face, dark prog sound that I think just has been like, it's been more fine-tuned on this record. The like chaotic and aggressive and dark parts of this record feel even more chaotic and aggressive, and then the like warm, calming, harmonic parts are even more warm and harmonic. It feels like they're really maturing into the sound that they've created, and I think they do it fantastically on this album. It's just such an interesting and unique style and sound that I feel like you have to check it out. Like it's just such a unique record.
My next album is Detritus by Sarah Neufeld. Sarah Neufeld is a violinist known for her work with Arcade Fire, and she also had a collaborative album with Colin Stetson. So check out Colin Stetson if you haven't.
Shoutouts to Colin Stetson.
Let's go, Colin Stetson.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, this new album, Detritus, is her string work, and it's very like swirling and psychedelic. It's another album that I love to get lost in. It kind of reminds me like a little bit of an album that came out a couple years ago, Temporal by Julia Kent. Also check that album out. She's a cellist, right? Yeah.
Yes.
But just that kind of encompassing string work is very like kind of hypnotic in a way, and I think that Detritus like checks a lot of good boxes for me. So yeah, check it out. It's something to throw on in the background if you're like doing something, and it has a very good presence, I'll say.
My number 3 is Promises, which is a collaborative album by Floating Points, Pharoah Sanders, and the London Symphony Orchestra. The way that this record kind of like slowly builds and plays off of this like looped instrumental passage that's introduced in the very beginning is just really incredible. It allows for just such a calm and serene sounding soundscape, essentially, as you know, Pharoah Sanders and Floating Points and the orchestra kind of work their magic over top of it. It just makes for a very calming and relaxing record and experience, and I would highly recommend checking it out. So
yeah, I'd have to agree. I was close to putting this record on my list, but didn't make the cut. I do think it is a great record and definitely worth checking out, though.
I also want to mention there's such an incredible amount of like detail within the instrumentation. Like all of these instruments as they are played have so much just texture to them. It's amazing. I feel like whenever I come back, I find like new aspects of it to appreciate.
My next album is Little Snake, a fragmented love story written by the Infinite Helix architect. I did review this on the channel, and I gave it a very positive review. And
Whoa.
Yeah, no,
Whoa.
I really love it. It's easily one of the most experimental albums that I've heard all year. For me, the experimentation clicks. I have to say, like, I don't think it will for a lot of people, because it gets pretty out there at points with just how weird it gets. I don't know, it just works for me, it was honestly unexpected for me considering I hadn't really loved Little Snake's previous work, but this one is just like a full album, like 50 something minutes long, and just almost every track is super out there, super weird, and I love it. He has a ton of features here too that work in super well. He has guys, like I said, Flying Lotus, Amon Tobin, like this is like pretty big names. Yeah, no, it works out all super well. One of my favorite albums of the year so far, definitely. Gonna see it at the end of the year, but yeah, check it out if you're interested in like the very experimental side of like IDM.
All right, well, for my number 2, I have Cheater by Pom Poko. I mean, firstly, like, no one's listened to this record, and I think that's a shame, because it's one of the most creative and weird rock records that I've heard all year. It's like a combination of, like, garage rock and noise rock, and you get the kind of, like, aggressive, fast-paced sound of a lot of garage rock-style tracks, while also having the weird experimentation of noise rock. And it all just comes together incredibly well. I especially love their vocalist, whose name I cannot pronounce, whose vocals are, these like very high-pitched, but incredibly sweet sounding, but their vocalist has this incredibly sweet, like high-pitched sounding voice that just complements the rest of the record incredibly well. And I'd highly recommend everyone check this out. Maybe one of the most accessible records on my list.
This is probably one of the most inaccessible records on my list, but I wanna shout out this new album by Krallice called Demonic Wealth. Don't know a ton about this band because I only heard about them like last week. This record is pretty great in my opinion. They're like an atmospheric black metal band. It, in a sense, kind of reminds me of like Death Heaven, but it's pretty different as well. More of just in the kind of atmospheres it creates using this very heavy instrumentation. The shortest track on this album is 5.5 minutes long, so they take their time building and getting these very, very heavy, dense soundscapes going. I think it works out really well. I love nearly every track on this album. Check it out. Also, these people are like unknown.
I will all be checking it out because I had never heard of this before. So for my number 1 pick, I have For the First Time by Black Country New Road. And for me, as far as this, there's like this kind of trend recently of these very like dark sounding experimental rock groups in line with like, Black Midi and also Squid recently. And I think this is like easily the best record of like that sound. The songs in this record go from like incredibly intense and anxiety inducing, for example, the track Sunglasses. They often come down to much calmer and like the beautiful sounding songs like on track X, and the instrumentals just work so wonderfully together. Fuck! There's such a varied range of instrumentation on this record that it feels like it's always throwing something new at you with every track. I especially love the horns that are all over this. They're so like rich and deep sounding. They're incredibly wonderful, and I think this record close to perfects this like new kind of style of rock music, and I love it. I would highly recommend it. Yeah, there we go. That's it. It's over. The video's over. There you go. Listen to the albums.
Peeking your mic so bad.
I am. But, it will be funny. It's the funny mic. Hey, check out the records we mentioned. I don't know what else to say. Hey, please, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, comment what your favorite albums of the year have been so far. Also, subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this content and wish to see more like it. That's it. That's it. I hope you have a wonderful day, and hopefully we'll see you later. Maybe wait, we won't see you. That's not how that works. Hey, hopefully you will see us later when you click on another video and once you subscribe to the channel. So do that.